Hi everyone, welcome to an hour with LawSikho. This is Ramanuj Mukherjee from IPDers, and today we have with us a very special guest, Saurav Datta, who is not only a lawyer but also a frequent legal analyst, writer, and journalist. So we would learn from Saurav Datta today about how to go legal writing and even a lot about how to publish if you're a lawyer, your legal writing, as well as how to write well and what is legal journalism like as a career. And of course, we'll have a lot of freewheeling discussion. Sort of the welcome to an hour with LawSikho.
Thank you, Ramanuj, for having me over. And it's indeed a great pleasure to speak to one of my college juniors. And I remember the last time we had met in Bombay, and it was many years ago. And then to connect back again and to talk to, young law school aspirants or law students as to what they could possibly do in a career of legal journalism. It's a pleasure. Thank you very much.
And it's really great having you and having a senior of ours leading the way so well, and it's great to have you here. And uh,
Hmm.
so let's actually, before I would like to hear from you what you have been doing since you graduated, because you have done a lot of different things, and it would give like our viewers like a sort of background as to what you have been doing and what we are going to talk about today.
Okay. It's been a really long journey, not really long in terms of years, but in terms of what I have been doing. I was a practicing criminal lawyer in the Supreme Court. Then I went into teaching. I headed LST law school tutorials for close to 2 years. Then I went into legal editing. I was with LexisNexis as a commissioning editor. Then I kind of didn't like Delhi and Gurgaon so much. So I decided to make a move to Bombay. I did my master's in social work from the Tata Institute of Social Sciences, TIS, in Bombay. And in Bombay, I had this kind of exposure, to political understanding, to a large number of upheavals and political activism of a certain line. I got into teaching in colleges. I taught in a number of colleges, Symbiosis, AC, Sophia, and all. I was teaching law, I was teaching some journalism subject, and then I also got back into writing. I was into writing for newspapers and all when I was in school. But during my law school days, that had taken a kind of hiatus. I was writing more for journals and writing projects as required in the rigorous law school curriculum. But then I got into writing for mainstream media. I wrote for a number of outlets. So I was practicing journalism. I was reporting on things which were happening in Bombay. I used to stay connected with everything which was going on around me. So I was writing about events and cases. See, I was trained in the law. So my forte is the law and legal analysis and legal journalism. I can go and cover a press conference, which is being called by the Congress Party or any other party. But that's not my area of focus. My area of focus remained the law. So anything and everything around the law, I was focusing on those and writing for a number of outlets. So that's what I have been doing. Then I went back, then I shifted back to Delhi. I joined an NGO, the Commonwealth Human Rights Initiative, where I was working with police reforms. So I was interacting with the government, I was interacting with top police officers, how to bring about reforms in policing strategies and all. And then I went back into mainstream journalism. I joined a number of outlets, then worked for them. And that's what I've been basically been doing. Over to you, Ramadu.
Yes, I think there was a time when you were the most famous, law entrance coach, or like everybody knew Saurav Datta. Everybody who went into national law universities knew
Oh,
Saurav
yes,
Datta.
that was a golden period. Yeah.
And of course, like a lot of you have taught a lot of students. So today
Yeah.
I posted, that I'm mentioning about you and how we did never met at NUJS, but I met you later.
Mm.
And people commented, many of your fans and students commented today on my LinkedIn posts.
So that's
Yeah.
very interesting and encouraging to hear.
Okay, so without much more ado, why don't you tell us, like, what is an opportunity for lawyers in the area of journalism and like legal analysis writing, if you can highlight that to start with. We'll soon also talk about, because we have many others who are not really interested in journalism, they want to remain lawyers, but they want to
Mhm.
write, they want to contribute, so we'll talk about those things.
Absolutely. I mean, when I talk about legal journalism, it is not only about uh, lawyers writing for publications. It is basically for people who are trained as legal professionals and who have, the facility, the faculty for legal analysis. They are writing for publication. Now, when I talk about publications, let me make it clear at the very outset. I'm not talking about SCC Online or All India Reporter Journal and all. That is a very niche market. What I am talking about is basically making law accessible to a large audience in the mainstream media. So it is perfectly possible for someone to remain as a practicing lawyer and still write analytical pieces. I'm not sure how much of reportage they can bring into it because reportage involves certain skills, a particular style, which I'm not sure that many practicing lawyers can adapt. But having said that, there are a large number of lawyers who are writing for mainstream media outlets. They are bringing their knowledge, the phenomenal amount of knowledge. I mean, good lawyers have, they're very knowledgeable, especially senior advocates and all. And there are some lawyers with a kind of, academic bent of mind who bring a particular kind of flavor, who bring a particular kind of insight to the analysis which they do. They are writing for mainstream media outlets. At the top of the hand, I can take the names of Gautam Bhatia, who has written a very well-known book, Disturb, Shock or Offend. It is a nice treatise on free speech and the Constitution and how laws have interacted about free speech in India. Then I can name Sanjay Hegde. Sanjay sir, I mean, he has been a kind of mentor. We still talk a lot. He writes in the Hindu, he writes in Express, he is prolific in social commentary on television channels, where people invite lawyers for their expertise. So there's Gautam Bhatia, there's Sanjay Hegde. Sanjay Hegde, by the way, is a senior advocate in the Supreme Court. Then if you look at some outlet like the Print, we have Madhav Khosla writing. Then this legal scholar, Tarunam Khaitan, he is now in Melbourne. He trained as a lawyer, then went into academics. He also writes columns quite often. That is the scene in India. If you look at the scene abroad, many lawyers write columns. There's Josh Gershwin, who writes. Then you look at this fantastic blog called Scotus blog, which reports on the Supreme Court of the United States. They have excellent analysis. And there are plenty, I mean, I can go on and take names, but if you delve a little deep, you will see that most of the stalwarts, and when it's stalwarts, I mean people who are stalwarts as legal analysts, as legal commentators, they have been trained as lawyers. They write fantastic commentary, especially if you look at, I mean, if you read the New Yorker, you can look at Jeffrey Toobin. Jeffrey Toobin writes in the New Yorker. He's a legal analyst for CNN. Then you have Dahlia Lithwick, who writes for Slate. Then you have one of the greatest legal commentators and legal journalists of all times, Anthony Lewis, who wrote for decades for the New York Times. And some of his reports, he was trained as a lawyer, he trained in Harvard Law School, and some of his reports were so outstanding that even the Supreme Court of the United States, in two cases, cited his reports in their judgments. So this, I mean, the sky is the limit as what you can do as a legal analyst. You don't have to be a full-time journalist, but if you have the felicity of bringing law to the masses, of explaining complex legal things in a very simple way. When I say simple, I do not mean simplistic. I do not mean that you are going to take the law or the legal topic and divorce it of all the complexities and all. No, not of that. But if you bring it to the masses, if you make it intelligible, if you present the law as a living subject, there's plenty of opportunities which you can explore.
Yeah, I remember, speaking to basically Arvind Datta, who is a senior counsel and one of the most
Yeah,
respected lawyers. So he happened to have edited the Mullah and Mullah Companies Act and all of that. And when he in our super lawyer interview, he said that turning point of his career was beginning to write, and he wrote extensively whenever he got opportunities about the cases you were doing. Like obviously after that or the research you found, you would make sure that he writes about them. And he said this was one of the major pillars of his career. And I think that is something that any lawyer who regularly writes really benefits from it, from the recognition. And even in fact, like uh, when people are considered for their stature and their whether they should be appointed a senior counsel also, I think these things play a major role as to
yes,
what.
absolutely. Not only for lawyers, but also for law professors. Because if you look at Indian magazine, The Atlantic, there's this professor called Professor Garrett Epps. And if you just see the analysis he has been writing on the US Supreme Court, especially after Justice Anthony Kennedy retired, if you see his analysis he has been writing about the Trump's, Muslim ban case and all. So it is a great incentive and a learning exercise for legal academicians as well as legal practitioners, especially those who are into litigation and practice some kind of public law. I'm not really sure about people who are into hardcore corporate law and who are only doing transactional lawyering and all, and how much they have to write about, or whether they can bring the law alive, or whether they can find the topic to write about. Now, I mean, if you want to write something about the GST, there are plenty of people, I won't take names, who are working in law firms in good positions and all, who have written about GST. But the common people would not find their writing to be very intelligible. They might not be able to kind of relate to it. So those are mainly suited for law journals. But for people who are practicing public law, writing for the mainstream media is a big, big opportunity.
Got it. So, if I am understanding you correctly, I think you are saying that uh, it is one thing to write in the legal journals and writing very academic articles, but when you are writing for the people, for the masses, it has a big role to play. So, if you are basically practicing public law, it is easier. I would say even corporate lawyers can write a lot. Like there are a lot of issues, maybe everything doesn't affect the common person, but nonetheless there is a large enough business community in India. And if you can write in an intelligible way about GST and about everything else, newspapers are happy to publish. Even like if you're doing M&A, you write about what are the uh, challenges companies are facing when they're doing M&A in India. What are the shareholders' interests are being protected or not? There are opportunities to write, I think, in
Yes, you
every.
can write in different outlets. You can write for the print papers, for the financial sector, for Economic Times, Financial Times, Financial Express, and all. And when you brought up the topic of corporate lawyers, I particularly remember the gentleman, Somashekhar Sundaresan. I think it's that
Exactly,
was
I was just thinking of him at this as you were
yes.
speaking. I was
He
just
used to
thinking.
write a column from the Mirror, and it was a very impressive thing. And even Justice Gautam Patel, before he became a judge, he was practicing basically civil law and corporate law in Bombay. But the kind of insight, the kind of knowledge he brought to his columns in Mumbai Mirror, nobody and none of the columnists who have come after that have been able to match what Justice Patel used to bring. So, I mean, he still writes. He has written some columns for Bloomberg Quint. You can look them up on the internet, and he's brought in a lot of insight. But he's not a regular writer.
Right. So basically, you are suggesting that if you are a legal practitioner, you have an opportunity to regularly write and write columns, perhaps, and it has many of the lawyers have done it, and it works for them. So
Yes.
legal writing and journalism, maybe not journalism in the strict sense, but writing about the legal issues is probably not only for people who are looking at a career in legal journalism, so to speak, but people who are also interested in being a
Sharing
practitioner.
experiences.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's great. I think that's an opportunity that every lawyer should explore. Now,
And with this, Ramanujay, I must add, with the growth of the internet and the number of websites coming up, the opportunities have increased manifold. Earlier, only the print media. They had their own correspondence or an analyst, or unless you were a really well-known face, a really famous senior counsel like Mr. Sauravji or Mr. Nariman, you could not get an opportunity to write. But with the growth of the internet, with the growth of news and analysis websites which have come up, there are plenty of opportunities.
I would completely agree with you. Like, I remember I had written an article on enforceability of contracts and how the government is trying to change the situation in India with respect to enforceability of contracts. And I just sent it to somebody at the wire, and it just took 3 hours to get a confirmation that we'll publish this. And this is a big difference from the earlier, erstwhile, like the print media. It would have taken me 7 days to get a response, or maybe I wouldn't have gotten a
Even
response.
more, even more, even
Yeah,
more.
even more. Yeah, so things are changing a lot, and it's good for us, like those who want to write and get published. And
Absolutely, because the space has become much more democratic. Editors respond to you, send in a page, they respond to you.
and also, I think the legal journalism space and even the editors are looking forward to influencers and real experts writing and different voices being available on their platform.
Yes,
And the
not
one
only
fundamental.
that,
Hmm.
even the television media, you have so many channels, right? And you see the 9 p.m. shows. On so many shows and so many programs, lawyers are being brought in as experts to comment.
So I think the opportunity is growing, and it's like something that if you're missing out on it, it's probably not great, because this is something to seriously look at. Now,
Yeah.
how do we get started? Let's say I am a young lawyer, or maybe even I'm a law student. I think even law students are able to publish from time to time. I have seen like many law students writing, and when I was a student, we had batchmates who were publishing in the Indian Express or in the Hindu. Sometimes not on their own, maybe they are collaborating with another author who's actually an expert. But how do you suggest that we get started in this area?
First of all, you should be having your finger on the pulse. What is making news? What is newsworthy? What would be of interest to a common man? That you should have a finger on the on the pulse of what is happening. You should be aware about court judgments which are coming in. And it's not the case that that the media or the people should care about only major Supreme Court judgments, because there are plenty of cases where even high courts, a law laid down by high courts, have been subsequently upheld as a law by the Supreme Court. So many high court decisions also provide you with a lot of insight. Having your pulse on the topic, keeping track of what judgments are coming in and what would you have interest. The next is, I must say that something of, to some extent, you should have a journalistic flair. Now, journalists are not experts. They're not supposed to be experts. They're supposed to inform the people. Okay? Now, so when you inform the people, you inform in a manner so that They get all the nuances. You can write your opinion, no problem at all. But what I have learned in my journalistic career, especially when I was writing for Scroll, is instead of just opinionating, if you have a flair for presenting the facts in a certain manner and letting the facts speak for themselves, your writing becomes, much greatly livelier. It becomes, much more incisive, and you have to bring the depth of your legal knowledge to it. I'll give an example. Let's say I was a student. I mean, I would take Bombay as an example, Bombay or Pune. Let's say you were a student, a third year student in ILS Pune or in GLC Bombay, and you're reading about what is happening, and you read about that, six or five people, social activists, lawyers, tribal rights activists, and all. They have been arrested from different locations in India, mostly from Bombay, Pune, and Nagpur, and they have been charged, with hatching a plot to assassinate the prime minister. They have been called urban Naxals and all. You're reading the papers regularly, and you read that the police has been doing a series of press conferences where they are giving out every detail. What were the emails written by these people? What was contained in those letters? What were they planning to do? And when you were reading them, even as a student, you should have been able to get a sense that, you should have that sense of what is happening, what could possibly happen, and you get the sense that these people, the police, they are trying to kind of muster public opinion. They are trying to influence public opinion, which could subsequently help them in the court. Now, even though you are a student, you keep abreast of law reports, what judgments are coming in and all. And if you look at a particular Bombay High Court order, and you see that this order tells the Maharashtra police and the Bombay police that till a charge sheet is filed, you cannot give out details of investigation, of the background of the accused and all to the media. And then you put two and two together and you just pitch an article to an editor you know that look, this is what is happening, this is in the news, this is a news spec. Every story must have a news spec. If it is something which happened 5 years ago, it would not be of interest in the media. The media wants things which happened immediately in the immediate past. This is the news spec, and you want to write an analytical piece on how the Maharashtra police, especially the Pune police, is violating the law. Now, many people will know, or many people will have the feeling that the police leaking out details to the media, or some sections. I would not blame the entire media, but some sections of the media, some journalists, blowing it out of proportion, making it very sensational, acting as the police's handmaidens, and messing things up. People have a feeling that there's something wrong about it. But you, as a legal expert, you come in and say, "Look here, this is the law. That's what the law says. This is what the High Court has said, and this is the law which the police is violating." It makes the reader wake up. That's number one. And it also helps in other cases. When I wrote a piece in Scroll on the illegality being committed by the Pune police so far, these arrests are concerned, I got a call from a number of activists and human rights activists in Bombay and Pune and some other parts of the country that, Saurav, could you please send us the judgment copy? I mean, the copy of the order. It was an order, not a judgment. The case is still pending. Could you please send us a copy? We want to use it in our activism. So that's what you should be doing. You must
You
have
must have.
your finger on the pulse.
Got it. Got it, Saurav. So, how do we get started then? Like, let's say we have identified. How do we start? Do we identify a topic and then we look for a platform? Because, for example, the kind of article you're talking about, criticizing a certain action of the police, it's also there is a political angle to it. I'm sure there will be some platforms which will be happy to
Every
cover it. Others.
legal writing is political. If you're a GST expert and you're criticizing the government's plans of implementing the GST, even if you're a corporate law or you're doing something political, so every writing has a political angle. And that's important because if you just take law as law in black and white without bringing the politics of the law, then the reader's interest goes. Because all great legal writers, they have brought about what is happening behind the scenes. You read Gautam Bhatia's piece in the Hindu about the UAPA and the Pune arrests. He brings back to life the Constituent Assembly debates as it played out, when they wanted to bring in special laws or the dark laws as they call it. And he merges that with how the UAPA is being used. So every writing has a political angle. It cannot be like, a vegetable dish, then it will not have its any value. What I guess, Ramanuj, is you are asking that people might be worried about possible repercussions, and some editors might not be willing to publish it. But trust me on this, so long as you substantiate what you are writing with case law, I've always found editors, even editors of websites, which are afraid to criticize the government. They have been very ready to publish my pieces because I have substantiated all my arguments with law. See, because you make an ad hominem remark. You just say that the police, they are devilish, they are handmaidens of the government. That is an off-the-cuff remark anybody can make. It does not require a legal expert to say that. But when you bring in the law and you say that, look, this is the law, this is what I'm basing my argument upon, even the editors are receptive because sometimes it has happened with me also, it happens with many people. The articles I've written, they got it vetted by the legal team so that it is not a case of contempt of court. It does not give rise to a defamation case. I remember this particular piece I wrote for DNA. It was criticizing Justice A.K. Ganguly, who had then retired for the sexual harassment of which he was found guilty. If you read the DNA piece, I did not mince any words. And Ganguly had just retired. So there was a high probability that there could be contempt of court because it has happened. When midday in Delhi they reported on Sauravs, illegal dealings and how he was helping his sons. The Delhi High Court took suo to cognizance and sued midday and filed a case of contempt, hauled up midday for contempt. But DNA published my piece because they said, I just asked the editor to publish my pieces that, did you not find any trouble with it? They said that no, we did not. I mean, we knew that this is a difficult topic, but everything what you have written has been substantiated. So our legal team said that go ahead and publish the piece and we would not face any trouble. So I don't think that should be a kind of, mental impediment to speaking your mind. You speak your mind, but you must back it up with solid arguments. Otherwise, you become like Subramanian Swami.
I think that's a very valuable input that you have given to us, because this is how we think these days, that pick a platform before you decide what you're going to write on. So that's the next question I wanted to ask you. Do you? I am sure that there are different platforms which cover different kinds of articles. Like there are platforms including online and uh, print media who covers do not cover like very complicated articles. or very complicated analysis, but there are others which do. And how do you decide, like, where to write and what to write about? Like, how do you go about? I mean, for
How
you,
do
it
I
must
go
be
about?
very simple, yeah, because you probably know exactly what to write where. But if you can tell us how to decide, you
I'll give
know,
you some examples. You have to know the political background of the media house you are writing to pitch an article. I tell you that it's not, and many people make this mistake. They write something, whatever their heart feels, whatever they want to express, they write it. Then they send the piece around to different media houses asking whether you would publish the piece or not. I have never followed the path.
Saurabh, we have lost you. Saurabh, we can't hear you.
Yeah. Is it better now?
Hello.
Can you hear me now?
Now I can hear you. Yes.
Yeah. Now, many people, what the mistake they make is they write whatever they have in their hearts and they want to express, and then they send it around to different media houses asking them whether they would publish it or not. Now, that's not the way to go about it. You have a story idea. You send a pitch to an editor that this is the peg, this is the angle I want to take, this is my story brief. Story brief you write in one paragraph or two paragraphs. You cannot write your entire story when you are pitching the article. And then they get back and say, yes, we would like to have all these lines. Sometimes the editors might want to put their own suggestions that as to what angle they would want, they would like you to explore. And then you write it. Otherwise, just writing for the sake of it, and then nobody is willing to take it, it is a colossal waste of time and energy. Having said that, when you are starting out as a writer, you should know the politics of the websites or the media houses you're going to write for. You should be reading them regularly, not only occasionally when your writing appears, but you should be reading them regularly to get a fair idea about which direction the political wind is blowing. For example, if you want to go hammer and tongs at the government, first choose the wire. The Wire is basically a left of center website. It believes in holding government's feet to the fire, and then it would publish it so long as you were writing it cogently, intelligibly, and with a certain style and flair. It would not be afraid. And there have been a number of instances where websites had published news which would be uncomfortable, which would be unpalatable to the government, and then they have taken down those articles, because they were apprehensive about repercussions. The Wire, as a policy, does not take down any article, even if it faces defamation suits worth crores of rupees. Then you look at, I'll give another example. Senior advocate Indira Jason, who has been one of my mentors, both in litigation and in the kind of political and legal activism which I do through my writings and other utterances. She has started something called the Leaflet, which is a platform with a very progressive outlook. And there was one report by the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights of Kashmir. Most of the mainstream media outlets, they did not publish it, or they published opinions ridiculing ridiculing the report and its findings. Some website, a particular website, even called the report idiotic. That is, the worst ad hominem. That is the weakest argument I think which someone can make. That without pointing out the flaws, you're just calling something idiotic out of your head. The leaflet carried an article by this lady called Srimoy, which focused on, the demand for independence, the demand for self-determination, and what is so striking about the report. And that particular article got huge viewership. And many people praised it, saying that, look, this is a lesson for the mainstream media, which were just poo-pooing the report. But this article by Srimoy It spoke on logic, it was based on substance. So you got to have, and this comes with experience. This comes with more reading. You get a kind of political understanding, and you see that what kind of issues the website deals with, and then you send it accordingly. For example, earlier, uh, there was a time when Open magazine. There's this magazine called Open, which is basically owned by the Goenka group. It used to be very radical, and it used to criticize the government when it was being edited by Manu Joseph and then Hato Singbal. But then there was a change in the tide, and Open became totally a pro Modi government, a pro Hindu right wing, a pro right wing outlet. If you are, I mean, I cannot force my political beliefs down anyone's gullet. But if you are so gaga about the government, if you want to crow like a rooster about the government's achievements, or if you want to talk about that, about if you want to talk something positive about love jihad, or if you want to criticize Sushma Swaraj for sacking someone based on the complaint of a Muslim woman. I'm just giving examples. They're only indicative, they're not exhaustive. Try Open Magazine. If you want to make ad hominem remarks without substance and use a lot of adjectives in your writings and all, and if you are pro right wing and all, try outlets like Swarajya, Op India. You could do that. Else, there are things like this is like Scroll, Wire, EPW, which take a different line. Then there are outlets like Delio. I must tell you about this. There are some outlets which publish every kind of opinion. They present all sides. They do not have any particular ideological bent of mind. So you could try Delio, which publishes. Delio used to publish, I used to write for Delio, criticizing the government left, right, and center. And they used to publish my articles, even though Delio is owned by the India Today group, and the India Today group is seen as something, very close to the Modi government. So the newspaper ownership also matters. But there are some websites like Firstpost. I just slam the government with my Firstpost articles. Firstpost is owned by Network 18, which is owned by Anil Ambani, very close to the Modi government. But I remember a particular piece I wrote about Venkaiah Naidu, something which Venkaiah Naidu had done about the national anthem and all. It was basically taking him to the cleaners, but Firstpost published it. So you have to be aware and roll the dice accordingly.
So I think you have to kind of figure out the editorial lines and understand, the proclivities, and you have to publish what they're already publishing, because you are not going to write something and change the editorial lines. You have to
Yeah,
see, like, which platform, whatever is your voice, whatever is your argument, you have to see that which are the conducive platforms, and then go along that line. If you're purely writing a legal article which doesn't have a political intonation, which is possible, not everybody is writing either praising or there are other things as well which may not have anything to do with politics. In those cases, probably you would choose platforms which are not so political. Tell us more about, like, the Hindu or like the Indian Express and the more well recognized print media. How does it work over there? If I want to publish there, what should I be writing about, or how does it
you
work?
have to know in the print media. In the print media, you have to know the commissioning editors who commission those pieces. They have editors for opinions. They have an opinion editor. Most media outlets are having an opinion editor nowadays. You have to know them. You have to build a kind of rapport with them. You have to show your previous writings so that they also feel that okay, they they get a kind of incentive in publishing you, even if you're a newbie. If you have been able to impress them by your previous writings, and if you've been able to show them that you can bring some fresh idea, some fresh insight onto the table, they would get to do that. But I must say, in the print media, it is a even in the print media in particular, and even elsewhere, it is a kind of incestuous world. You have to know the people. If you just send in, like let's say, for example, a particular website, it will say a particular media house says that, for any article or pictures, if you picture an article, pictures at the Hindu.com. Rest assured that most of the times, many a time enough, your emails will not get any answer. They will not get any reply because those email IDs, they are flooded with emails. Everybody wants to write, right? Everybody wants to know, everybody has an opinion, and particularly in India. Somebody said that, and an opinion is like the asshole. Everyone has one. So everybody wants to express their opinions. They are flooded with and they don't respond. But if you somehow manage to know the people who are behind, who are running the scene, you approach them. You approach them. And the best way to approach is on Twitter. Without Twitter, if you are not big time into Twitter, then, well, journalism in any form might just not work for you because you will simply be seen as living, under a rock. There have been many times when I did not know that I wanted to write for a particular outlet when it just started out. I did not know an editor, but I was heavily into Twitter. I asked someone on Twitter that, I have a story idea in mind. Could you please send me your contact detail via direct message? I asked them very politely and they obliged. And then over the years, I started writing to them directly on their emails. Sometimes I speak to them over the phone or text messages or WhatsApp and discuss story ideas. And that's how we did it. But it is difficult in the print media because also see Ramanuj, print has a very limited capacity. It is a very limited capacity. Also, if you write a piece, there's a shortage of space. They would want to heavily edit your piece. And I know many cases where many respected lawyers and all, they are not happy with having their pieces edited. But the print has its own limitations. So if you wanted to start out and if you want to write more frequently, it is better to look at online. Online, you can add on to the story as it is growing. Print, you put the paper to sleep. The next day, the paper will be printed and delivered, or will be printed in the night and delivered. You can't add on to it. Whereas in the online sphere, you have that luxury. And it is not true that only in print you get the prestige. Today, more, and if you look at academicians writing for the mainstream media, see the number of articles by, top academicians the Wire is carrying or Scroll is carrying. The print doesn't carry so much. They're writing more for, websites like people like Martha Nussbaum or who is this? Who's the one? The lady professor who was the registrar of NALSA, Amita Dhanda. Amita Dhanda and all. They are writing regularly for the Wire.
Absolutely.
Ramchandra Guha. He writes for Space sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there is like a lot of top-notch academicians, authors, scholars, analysts regularly writing online. So tell me something that, this is a question that people have been asking me since we shared that we'll be having you, that do you get paid for writing? Because
I
unpaid
don't
writing
write
is
for free, and it is against our journalistic principles to write for free because, when you write something, let's say you reach a certain position, okay, you got some recognition and you got some fame and all. You write something for free for a mainstream media outlet. Then you are screwing the chances of future journalists because then the media would want to exploit them, and there's a lot of exploitation in the media. When people who are interns and all, who are interning and all, they don't get paid properly. They have to waste long hours. Many a time and not freelancers, the legacy media outlets, they expect you to write for free and tell you on your face that if you're writing for us, it adds to your prestige, so we're not going to pay you. We're not going to pay you. Now that's Spotify completely obnoxious. I have never written for free, except for some newsletters and all of trade unions and NGOs, which are into activism. Then I would write for free. There's a Marathi magazine called Right Angles. It is basically an activist kind of, webzine. One of my articles I wrote for somewhere else, they wanted me to write for them. Also said, okay, I can just elaborate upon it. I can make it longer, add more depth and all. I'm not charging any money. But if you look at proper journalists and all, and everybody will tell you, it is a cardinal sin to write for free because you are opening yourself up for exploitation. And I know editors, especially Naresh Fernandez of Quint, who will not let you write for free. If you write for him, he will make sure that he pays you. Even the Wire does that. They do not accept any articles for free. But Shekhar Gupta's print has another philosophy. Print says only when we commission an article, we will pay for it. But you want to write for the print, you find the article good, you approach us, we will not pay for it. But you must get the print.
Got it. So, how do you do it? Because I know many lawyers who are writing and they're publishing. When they send it, it gets published. But like you said, it's not commissioned. So how do they get paid? And people have asked me this question. They're specifically they're messaging me and asking me this. That let's say I started writing and my articles are getting published. Initially, I'm happy with that, but I just want to know if I can also get paid and how can I get paid. This is the question.
No, why should you be initially happy? That's wrong. Let's say you are writing for an outlet for the first time. You approach the editor, showing her or him the body of work, and so that I am interested in writing for your outlet. Could you please let me know how do you compensate your writers? They will tell you what they pay. There have been cases where I've written to media outlets I've not written for before and asked them how do they compensate the writers. And if I've not found the compensation to be worth my time, I've not written for them. You ask them upfront. There's no harm in that. You're not being rude, you're not being rash. You're just asking a just question.
Got it. So now, if you can give us some ideas about, so there are many lawyers who are struggling to make their name in the court, and they are trying to argue in the court, and it'll take a while before they start earning a decent living amount. So sometimes, can they look at this, if they're good writers, as a way to supplement their income? Is it a realistic one?
Uh, but if but if you're trying to set up your practice, law is a very demanding mistress, right? It will take you all day to set up your practice, and only in your leisurely time can you write. But if your goal is to set up your practice, if a lawyer is struggling to establish himself in the legal field, then I don't think that writing should be a priority, or the kind of writing which will ensure a steady income. That would be difficult. That would be really difficult. You have to focus on your priorities.
Right. So that's very enlightening. Now, if you can tell us, like, what sort of payments people who are going to practice, like not practice, maybe do journalism, if they work full time with media houses, what sort of payments can they expect? Or if they're doing freelance writing, if you can give us some numbers. I know obviously it will be varying widely.
No, there are some confidentiality clauses which I cannot violate, but I will still try to give you some fair idea. First, this idea that if you want to become a journalist, you have to get a journalism degree. That's not true. I've been practicing journalism, I've been teaching journalism, though I've never been to J school. And I'm none the worse off for it. Second, there are some outlets which pay you per piece. The average right now the market rate is for around 800 words and all, they pay you 3,000 to 4,000 rupees. That's the average market rate. Okay. Some outlets like Scroll pay you per word, and it depends on your reputation, and how much they will be paying you per word. That rate might differ. I would always say if you are, you should look out. And there is, I must tell you, there is journalist come author called Kavita Rao. She has written a book on journalism. I don't remember the book right now, but if you just look her up, Kavita Rao, Kavitha. She is from Bangalore. She got a degree from NLS. Then she worked for the financial papers and all. Then she did journalism for mainstream journalism for quite some time. Then she decided to go freelance. She wanted to broaden her horizons. She has written on a rich variety of topics, and many of them for international media outlets. And Kavita ma'am always told me and always tells people that try to write for international outlets. That will enable you to modify your style also, because when I write something for India, I write knowing that people will know about this topic. But when I write something for an international organization, I have an entirely different audience. I have to modify my style, I have to modify my writing accordingly. There was a time when I was writing regularly, almost on a weekly basis, for this publication from London called Index on Censorship. I used to write about Indian cases of censorship, but for an international audience. There was a time when I was writing regularly for Al Jazeera English. They used to pay very handsomely. Just to give you an example, Al Jazeera English, if you manage to pitch a story about India or whatever, for an opinion piece, there was a time when I was writing an 800-word opinion piece for them, and I was getting paid at 350 US dollars. That amounts to something like 25,000 rupees. For 800 words, you are getting 25,000. So that is the limit. I mean, you can read. If you're writing for outlets like the Atlantic or the New Republic, but you need to be really established to do that. But if you manage to break through, even if you write for Quartz in Hong Kong, you can get paid very well. When I write for Asia Times, I get paid in US dollars. I cannot disclose the rate, but it's a good pay. It's a good amount.
Got it. I think that is very encouraging for the aspiring writers and legal journalists, because we keep hearing about how difficult it is for legal journalists. There are legal journalists in India who get a salary of 15 or 20,000 altogether for working full time as well. But yeah, I understand that if you do well in this profession, definitely money is not going. You're not going to go hungry. You can take care of yourself.
You will not be very rich,
You
but
will
you
not
will
be
not
very rich,
go
but
to
you will
bed on
not
a
go
starving
to bed
stomach
on a
also.
starving stomach also. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's also interesting. That you were probably not. You had told me. I remember when you were discussing idea of this session. You said that I don't want to give any wrong ideas, Ramanuj. That you cannot get rich by
Yeah.
doing journalism. Yeah. So you want to say anything about that?
No, I mean,
No, I mean,
journalism is about
journalism is
struggle.
about.
There's stiff competition because there are plenty of people. Everybody believes there are plenty of people who are doing, let's say, graduation in English language and in English literature. So that okay, I can think, I can speak, I have an opinion, I think I can write, so I think I'll make for a good journalist. There are plenty of people. And media houses, especially after demonetization, they're facing a severe cash crunch. And as you know, the media in India, even elsewhere, they don't earn profits. They mostly run on losses. Because just look at it. To produce a paper which is sold for 5 rupees, the production cost at a conservative estimate is around 27 rupees. So the media houses don't make profits. So they want to get people for cheap. So there's competition. So you have to stand out in the crowd. And one thing I must emphasize that day in and day out, your pulse should be on the news. You should not, be complacent and slacken off that. Okay, I wrote one article yesterday, and today I will not write anything. You should be like a sniffer dog, always hungry for the news. I'll give my own example. Today morning, I filed one copy with a particular outlet and worked very hard for it. It involved some research and all. I did that. Then I was throughout the day. Today, the Supreme Court opened after vacations of 44 days. And we know this is going to be a miscellaneous week. So plenty of PILs will come in and there will be a lot to write about. So I went to the cause list, which ran into hundreds of pages yesterday. And all day I was tracking what is, through different Twitter handles of legal news websites and all. Also by speaking to people, I was tracking what is happening in the Supreme Court because today is a big day. Now, all through the day, I did not find anything which could impress any editor. But then, towards the evening, just as I was about to set out, I saw, a news flash that in Punjab, they want to introduce the death penalty for drug-related offenses. I saw the tweet and immediately made a connection. I remember because when I was in Bombay, there was a very famous Bombay High Court case in which the court held that mandatory death penalty for NDPS offenses is illegal, is unconstitutional. So then I put two and two together. I saw the tweet. I remembered what I read about the Bombay High Court judgment. I did a little more research, and I sent a pitch to an editor that, look, this is the policy they are going to bring about in Punjab. It came as a news flash in the evening. It was around 4:45. It will come out in the papers tomorrow, right, as a news. I pitched it to an editor saying that, I want to write an analytical piece as to why this Punjab government's policy is likely to run into a legal hurdle. I haven't yet heard from him. It takes at least, 12 hours for an editor to look at the news cycle, the news flow, and respond. But I'm pretty optimistic that I will get some editor interested in an analytical piece. Now, if I had just slackened off after I filing my copy, which I did in the morning, and thinking that, okay, today was a Friday, I did not get anything from the Supreme Court, then I would have missed out on an article. You have to be constantly on the job, always going through Twitter, on your phone. You're very high-end gadgets nowadays. All the media houses, they have their apps, and you can sign up for instant alerts, from breaking news alerts. So they constantly give you, those alerts on your phone, and just keep an eye on it. Don't slacken off even for a moment. I mean, even when I'm out with friends and all for a beer, and I'm still checking my phone to see if any news has been breaking out. And with smartphones and all, in many court reporters I've seen, when I was a court reporter, when I was working for bar and bench for some time, there have been times when I have, filed copies of pieces on my BlackBerry. Even before I joined bar and bench, there have been times when I've been out on the field and I didn't have a space, for to take out my laptop and all. I used to have a BlackBerry at that point of time. I've written even 1,000 word pieces on a BlackBerry. So you get used to.
Absolutely. I keep writing all the time on my phone. I think we have no choice. We are living in a phone where in the world where the phone is trumping the computer. I think it is becoming the computer. Yeah.
The Samsung Galaxy S9 costs you much more than a Dell laptop.
I think we got a beautiful glimpse into the life of what it is to be a legal journalist. Thank you for that. We have a few questions, but before I go to that, I just wanted to ask one more thing. That is, how do you approach international platforms to pitch your article? All the other basic principles you have explained, we have understood that, you look at the platform, you look at what kind of things they cover, you match the style when you write, when you're for that platform, you pitch before you send. Although in my case, I have always just sent an article, and usually it was accepted because I approached online platforms most of the time. But I think, yeah, it's a great idea. You pitch to an editor, and editor agrees, and then you can get a pay as well. I think if it is commissioned. Understood all of that. Now, how do you approach international editors, and
Same.
how do you find them? Even how do you find Twitter is one way to find their
Yeah, I mean, for
contacts.
Al Jazeera, I knew a friend in Bombay. She was right. She was a reporter for Al Jazeera. So I asked her that, who is your opinion editor to whom I can pitch. She gave me the email address, and I figured out in my mind that if I take a particular issue, and if I want to write for an international audience, how I would like to approach the topic. So I wrote to the editor that, this is what I want. This is the news bank. Give a solid news bank. Don't pick up any news link from an obscure blog. Take it up, take a link. It is better to take a link from the mainstream, well-known media outlets. If it is published in the Express or the Hindu or TOI, that this is the news. This is what would interest an international audience. Also give examples as to how this they could resonate. I mean, if you're like Al Jazeera English used to be read mostly in the US. So when I used to pitch for them, I used to write that, this is what I want to write about. This is what the Indian courts have said. And something similar has been said by US courts also. You have to know your stuff. I know the US law because I read a lot of American magazines and websites. This is how your courts have also, dealt with the matter, and this is how I want to present it to your audience. And in most cases, they agree. Most cases, they agree. You have to read a lot. You have to be very well.
I think that is one of the benefits of being a lawyer and also being a journalist, that you have to keep reading
Not
a
being a
lot.
lawyer. There are plenty of people who are lawyers but who don't read. They read only their EIR or SEC. That will not open you up. You have to read a lot of magazines and journals. And the web is a fantastic opportunity. What I would suggest for students and all, what to read, if they want to make a career in writing also, or if they want to write on the side, there are some basic principles. You have to read Anthony Lewis. He is dead. He doesn't write for the New York Times anymore. But you just read about him. Anthony Lewis. Then for the New York Times, there's Adam Liptak, fantastic journalist. For Guardian, there is Joshua Rosenberg. For Slate, there's Dahlia Lithwick. For NPR, which is very well known, there's Nina Tottenberg. Then you read Jeffrey Toobin for CNN, for New Yorker. Then you read the New York Review of Books. Very analytical, very precise, very good journals. Okay. And then you read about David Cole. David Cole was in Georgetown before he joined the ACNU. The London Review of Books. So these are mandatory. These are things which I learned are mandatory, and we spend a lot of money also on subscribing to these outlets and reading.
Got it. Can you tell us how can one get a basically a column with a? We see that sometimes lawyers and academicians there's a column somewhere. How do
For
you get
columns, you have to be very experienced. Only then, in the mainstream, they will give you a regular column. Like in GN, I was writing for the website when I was in Bombay. I had a weekly column with them. But for in the Hindu and all, or for the Express, let's say Pratap Bhanu Mehta, he has a regular column. But when you're starting out, I don't think that's possible.
Right. So you have to establish yourself before you can.
Yes, your credentials.
Great. So let's see a few questions. We have more or less crossed our 1 hour limit, but let's see a few questions we have got. Arunika Mishra is asking, hello sir, how can I increase my credibility as a legal journalist except by getting published frequently? I mean, is there any course or diploma or something which I can do? Is that what she's
I
asking?
did not do it. There's no course in legal journalism. And as I remember, in the December 2014 issue of Caravan, I wrote a piece called Under Judgment, which criticized the scene of legal journalism in India. Okay, so legal journalism in India is not even in the nascent stages. It is in a very shambolic state of affairs. So there's no course in legal journalism. The only way you can increase the credibility is being by being more visible. By being more visible, I mean writing more, commenting more intelligently on social media. Many of opportunities have come to me because of my Twitter following, what I say on Twitter, what I write on Twitter, what I share on Twitter. I share a lot of links. That has got me a lot of credibility.
Great. Arunika is also asking, is it advisable to work freelance or enroll with a certain newspaper or legal blog?
You cannot enroll if you want to be a full-time journalist and you work full-time with the newspaper, you do that. But at the same time, if you love your freedom too much, which I do, then if you're a freelancer, you're not hemmed in. For example, there was a time when I was the executive editor of this magazine called India Legal. Okay. Now it is a weekly magazine, and I could write only one piece per week. That's it, because it's a weekly magazine. They take other papers also. Now, when as a freelancer, I can write a piece every day on any topic I wish, of any angle I choose. But as a freelancer, it is also difficult to gain access. When you have the press card, when you say that I am from the Hindu or from the Express, people are more willing to speak to you. For to do that as a freelancer, you have to gain experience and build up credibility. So it is advisable that you start out with a newspaper or a media outlet, and later on, when you build up a solid body of work, you go freelance.
Got it. Got it. We have Medba. I don't know how exactly to pronounce this. MEDKBA. Medba. Dear sir, I am studying law and would like to be writing some legal things, where to start and which is the starting point. I have some IT knowledge as well. Okay, so basically, somebody who's studying law and would like to write legal articles, and what is the starting point? That's what she's asking.
Look out for websites, look out for topics. See, what you are writing is different. If you're giving them the same stale stuff which everybody is writing, then nobody's going to entertain you. So you can start writing your own blog. You can start reading up and then pitching your articles to outlets. And do not get disheartened by rejections. You initially, some of your pictures might be rejected, but over the years, I have perfected, and many others have done it also. We have perfected some kind of strategy that if I am sending out 10 pictures a month, 8 get accepted. This has come with practice. Look for your college magazine or journal. Start from your college magazine or journal.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, despite so many years of experience, still there is rejection that you face and experienced journalists face.
Rejections can be from various reasons. One page I moved to Al Jazeera recently, and they told me that we would have loved, we have always loved to have you writing for us. But right now, our India focus has been shifted. We will come back with an India focus before the 2019 general elections, but right now we decided to focus elsewhere. So it is not falling within our scheme of things. A rejection does not mean that your pitch is not good enough. A rejection can happen due to a variety of reasons. So there's nothing to be disheartened about.
Exactly. So, I mean, I am guessing those of us who start writing would be facing a lot of rejection. So we should be prepared for it and absolutely not get disheartened.
Take it on your plate.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Saurav. That this was like a fantastic, eye-opener session for us. We have learned a lot in the last 1 hour and a few more minutes than 1 hour. So thank you so much. It was really wonderful. But before we go, would you like to share one last message with our audience?
Well, it's been a pleasure speaking to you, Ramanu, and sharing whatever I got to share. I do not believe in like big messages and all, but I would say knowledge and perseverance Knowledge and perseverance, these two are essential. And if you have both of these two, if you practice these two, you're surely going to end up somewhere. I want to keep things simple.
I got it. Thank you so much. It was really wonderful, and we hope to have you back soon again, teaching more, hands-on things. Today, probably we could not cover a lot of things. It was pretty much a superficial, just discussing on from bird's eye view things. But hope to learn more in-depth things from you one day, and looking forward to that.
Thank
Thank
you,
you so
Raman.
much. Thank you, thank you. I'll end the session here. Everybody, do come back tomorrow again 8 to 9 and subscribe to the channel LawSikho channel on YouTube so that you keep getting these updates and many more interesting discussions and sessions. Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow again. Thank you, everybody. Good night and bye.